everybody. Just wanted to say how much I'm missing you, and I wish I could be there over the next couple of days while you're all together. This has definitely been, since we last met, a pretty intense time to get some work redone. In my other class, which is going to be coupling with this class, I've been trying to work out some theoretical framework approaches with Alicia, and the first draft I sent her with working out some storytelling work through the last 50 years of contemporary fly fishing storytelling. I did a really good job, but instead of creating a literature review, according to Alicia, and it's very true, I created more of a biographical sketch. And so I had to revamp that particular assignment, and have been working for the last 2.5, 3 weeks to actually get a pretty big chunk of theoretical framework starting to work out with a philosopher and phenomenologist by the name of Maurice Merleau-Ponty. And this guy is going to turn out to be probably the most influential phenomenologist that I'm going to be working through as I start to develop my own theoretical framework in phenomenology. So I'm going to give you an update on how that's gone. As you know, I'm working to, and I'm going to just tell you the title of what I've got here. It's called Connecting Our Children to Nature with a Contemporary Eco-Contemplative Philosophy and Practice Through the Sacred Art of Fly Fishing. And so that particular title exudes quite a bit of information. Philosophy to practice, fly fishing, contemporary, eco-contemplative. So I'm trying to pull quite a few things together to create this phenomenological philosophy through a theoretical framework with my conceptual framework, and then build this philosophy into finally a practice. And so obviously you guys know that it all started with my grandfather and me fishing when I was a kid. And so I have given a small piece of background on that in my introduction, and have worked forward to get into why it is that storytelling is important. What is it about contemplative ecology and how it can connect storytelling knowledge originating from lived experiences of fly fishers, how contemplative ecology is such an important aspect of this whole phenomenology of perception, which is what I'm going to talk to you mostly about through Merleau-Ponty's work, and how fly fishing is considered a sacred art. A lot of people don't understand what it is about fly fishing being a sacred art, and so I've been able to find some really pertinent information to kind of settle that question out and provide a really good argument on why fly fishing is considered a sacred art. That was also in the paper that I'm producing right now. I also am bringing in Thomas Berry, who is a very big cultural historian who I follow very deeply in my heart, soul, and knowledge base. And he has this aspect of a communion of subjects, not a collection of objects, as a paradigm in how we should think and how we should live our world. So that's also going to be embedded into my paper. But first of all, I wanted to go back and really focus in on Merleau-Ponty. And one of his first questions is, what is phenomenology? So I'm going to read a little bit of information that I've been able to pull together from Phenomenology of Perception, and get you to hopefully understand where I am taking you, or I'm going to take my this work into from a philosophy to a practice. So in order to understand why phenomenology serves as the proper theoretical framework to develop and establish this and future studies describing the lived contemplative ecological experiences of fly fishers, Merleau-Ponty serves as the seminal philosopher to study through his book Phenomenology of Perception. Best known for his original and influential work on embodiment, perception, and ontology, he also made important contributions to the philosophy of art, history, language, nature, and politics. He played a central role in the dissemination of phenomenology. In the opening line of the preface of Phenomenology, he asked the question, what is phenomenology? And he gives a really great answer when he wrote, the phenomenology is the study of essences. And as you know, I've been working very hard on my conceptual framework to create essences, which I didn't even know when I named it that this is what he said were essences. So it kind of worked out really nicely. And he says that it holds that all problems amount to defining essences, such as the essence of perception or the essence of consciousness. And yet phenomenology is also a philosophy that places essences back within their existence and thinks that the only way to understand man and the world is beginning from their facticity. Merleau-Ponty, who increased his own mental faculties from other phenomenologists coming before him, such as Edmund Husserl and Martin Heidegger, wrote that phenomenology in the end is nothing more than making explicit the Lebenswelt, or the life world, that Husserl, toward the end of his life, presented as the fundamental theme of phenomenology. Merleau-Ponty, in his Phenomenology of Perception, did not want to fall into the trap of science, explaining the whole of the world, as he knew before science could even enter the picture as a second-order expression. Everything one comes to know about the world through his lived experiences with it comes before scientific thought or expressions. Therefore, Merleau-Ponty believed that science neither has nor will ever have the same ontological sense as the perceived world, for the simple reason that science is a determination or an explanation of that world. So we must return to a perception where we see ourselves as the absolute source. And therefore, Merleau-Ponty says, I am the one who brings into being for myself, and thus into being in the only sense that the world could have for me, this tradition that I choose to take up, or this horizon whose distance from me would collapse were I not there to sustain it with my gaze. To return to the things themselves is to return to this world prior to knowledge, this world of which knowledge always speaks, and in this world with regard to which every scientific determination is abstract, signative, and dependent, just like geography with regard to the landscape where we first learned what a forest, a meadow, or a river is. So phenomenology will properly embrace the lived eco-contemplative experiences of fly fishers because their perceptions will be purely described, and because perception is not a science of the world, nor even an act or a deliberate taking of a stand. It is the background against which all acts stand out and is thus presupposed by them. Therefore, phenomenology must describe the basic structures of human experience and understanding from a first-person point of view, in contrast to the reflective third-person perspective that tends to dominate scientific knowledge and common sense. Describing the lived experiences of fly fishers will attest to their perception or memory of something, in this case, how the field of contemplative ecology influences and illuminates their lived fly fishing experiences. I was able to extract 6 main pieces of evidence that were a construction of Merleau-Ponty's theoretical framework through his Phenomenology of Perception. I'm not going to read these to you, but I am going to give you a flavor of what of their titles, just to give you an idea of where I'm heading with this. The first is called I Am My Body as being embodied perceivers. And this is where he goes into how the body is so connected through our perception. So he's a very big proponent of the body. He talks about the phenomenological world as lived experience is inseparable from subjectivity and intersubjectivity. The theory of intersubjectivity is going to play very heavily into my theoretical framework. Also, there was a third piece of information that goes into the sensing aspect, how we perceive the landscape as embodied subjects through our sensing nature. I know that David Abram was a very big proponent of Merleau-Ponty when he wrote The Spell of the Sensuous, and he took that even further, which is also a part of my theoretical framework. He also talks about the primordial silence, where in the fly fishing world, silence is huge. This is where we get into the flow of consciousness through our silent, primordial silence activities, which is what fly fishing is very good about doing. He also goes into language, and obviously me with storytelling, how I'm interested in the storytelling aspect and this intergenerational transfer of knowledge through the power of storytelling. I go into how Merleau-Ponty looks at language as it's gathered through our sensory perception. And so finally, he talks about the flow of consciousness, and through this flow of consciousness is where I'm going to try very hard to bring in my conceptual framework to show how this, I call it contemplative ecological presence or eco-contemplative presence, is actually happening through our flow of consciousness. And this happens before we even have the ability to think, that these experiences are unfolding as our flow of consciousness is connecting to this presence. And he talks very much about this as well. And this connects very nicely Merleau-Ponty's work with this particular subject as it relates to contemplative ecology and the other work that these 6 other people have worked out, that I've worked out in my conceptual framework. So that's kind of where I am. Guys, still have a lot of work to do. I apologize if I'm getting some assignments a little bit late to you guys, but I am promising to get this completed on time. I hope you guys have a great weekend. I hope this made some sort of sense and that you see where I've progressed since we last were together. And I will try to stay warm up in Labrador.